May I introduce now Stewart Barrett and Services Alliance. Stewart, is that right?
That's correct.
Fantastic. Thank you.
Good afternoon. Like Gary, I work for the Department of Finance. I'm based in Perth, and my role is to provide support and assistance to our regional operations. We've got a fully regional setup with 4 regions, and Gary is the manager of our central region, one of those regions. Gary mentioned to you about works. He mentioned to you about maintenance and minor improvements. Across regional WA, Department of Finance, or BMW, however we wish to be known, manages work of this type to the tune of $70 million a year annually. About $15 million of that would be carried out in the Midwest Gascoyne area, the area that Gary manages. It involves over 1,000 contractors and some 50,000 transactions annually. Of those transactions, 99% of them are under $20,000 in value, and 99.9% are under $150,000 in value. And if you remember back to what Gary showed you about the buying practices, that $150,000 is the threshold for an open public tender. So for the restricted quotes and the direct purchasing, 99.9% of our transactions occur in that area. And that's what I want to talk about today. That's what Service Alliance is about. That's what this talk is about. In particular, the Service Alliance, it's where there's an initiative to revise the current Service Alliance agreement. I don't know how many of you work for in the building industry who provide building improvements and maintenance services, or how many of you know about our current Service Alliance agreement. But for those of you who are interested in this, this afternoon's presentation can only be a quick overview, but there will be an opportunity for a more comprehensive and targeted presentation and discussion next week. For those of you who aren't interested, this speech only goes for 10 minutes. The current arrangement was first set up in 1998, so it's been in place for 14 years and about 4 department changes. It's for use in regional WA. It doesn't cover the metropolitan area. It's essentially a non-contractual relationship between what was then CAMS and contractors that was to be based on trust, sharing of risks and cooperation. In 2009-2010, it was reviewed. Now, as part of that review, we actually met with contractors here in Geraldton back in March 2010. I don't know if any of you were here for that meeting, but we did actually have a small group of contractors come in and we spoke to them about how that arrangement was working. The findings of the review were essentially that from our side of it, we'd lost focus. It wasn't actually functioning quite as we had intended it to go. It was not uniformly applied across the different regions, right across the state. However, generally the spirit of it, that one of cooperation and trust and working together, was being adhered to. And the recommendation was that it should be refreshed and enhanced. So that brings us to what we're here to talk about, which is the Service Alliance 2012. You'll notice there's not a lot in the name change. That's because there's not a lot of change. It's planned for implementation later this year, and it's essentially a pre-qualification to pre-qualify contractors for regional works up to $150,000 in value, up to that public tender threshold. The steps for setting it up will be early advice to industry, such as our meeting here today and the one next week when we come together to talk more comprehensively about it, and one held in Geraldton yesterday where we met with contractors to discuss the introduction of this new arrangement. We will then invite applications, which will be able to be downloaded from the website, hopefully, and up to contractors then to complete the application by providing information on your business entity, who you are and what your details are, what type of work you are interested in and where you want to carry out this work. There will be a number of compliance questions, probably 2 or 3, asking you to confirm your willingness to adhere to our conditions of contract and to maintain certain insurances. and there'll be an opportunity to tell us about yourself so that we can better understand you from an organisational capacity and capability point of view, and from what experience your company has had in delivering services of this type. You will submit your application, they'll be evaluated, and then you'll be advised of the outcomes by letter, advising you that you've been registered and when the starting date for the new arrangement takes over. The arrangement will remain open and new applications will be able to be submitted at any time. So it's not a closed arrangement. How will it operate? At the moment, if you saw, again following the buying rules that Gary was explaining to you earlier, contractor selection for work below $20,000 in value is generally at the discretion of the project officer. Less than $5,000 they can pick the contractor to directly work with. Now the bulk of that work for us is in fact breakdown repairs. And those of you who are doing breakdown repairs would know that that is mainly allocated via the maintenance call centre based in Manjimup. But it is BMW who nominate which contractors they are to give the work to. So that's part of that discretion of who we give work to. And between $5,000 and $20,000, the process is one of multiple quotes from selected contractors. Again, who do we select to provide those quotes? That will be at the discretion of the project officer. Now, where practical, we propose that for both of these types, either direct engagement or getting quotations, that we will try to confine ourselves to working with pre-qualified, that is service alliance contractors. So we will only deal with those contractors. Of course, there will be situations where either we don't have a contractor in that type of work or in that particular location, in which case we would reserve the right to go to the market generally. And there may be times when our pre-qualified contractors are not available due to workloads and other matters. But primarily our aim is to be giving this work to our pre-qualified, our preferred contractors. Between $20,000 and $150,000, work is still by quotation, but we would be using that now as restricting those quotations to all pre-qualified contractors. Using Tenders WA, which Gary explained to you or gave you a quick overview of, we would be putting those jobs onto Tenders WA so that all pre-qualified contractors would be eligible to quote for that work. And of course, over $150,000 we're talking about a public tender, again, which would be advertised through Tenders WA. Now, with this arrangement and the nature of these low-value purchases, all these purchases under $20,000, we do have a lot of high-volume, low-value purchases in particular areas, say electrical work in a particular area. It's repeat work, it's of a similar nature. So where we have these high-volume, low-value situations, such as breakdown repairs, we may in fact put in some special arrangements with our pre-qualified contractors, where we might lock in some agreed rates, where we may even set up some panels that operate on a term basis. But again, we'll be working only with pre-qualified contractors. Now, this is largely brought about because we're looking for some management changes for ourselves. In fact, we're looking to set up a database whereby we can hold details of our contractors, such as the type of work they do, where they want to do it, what they're particularly interested in, the fact that they are pre-qualified with us, to assist our project officers to know who they should be dealing with when doing their work, so they can adhere to our obligations under the arrangement, that is to deal with the pre-qualified contractors. We have in fact also revised our conditions of contract. I don't know how many of you would know, but we use a minor works conditions of contracting, generally from the lowest value through to, I don't know, several $100,000 at times. And it is actually quite inappropriate and doesn't really cover what's required in some of these low-value transactions. So we will be revising our conditions of contract, and that'll be advised through the application form as to what they are, to do that, so that when you look at it, so we're trying to make that more practical and more meaningful in respect to what we're doing. And it will address areas such as retentions, insurances, liquidated damages, things which are probably out of place in some of this low-value contracting. So in summary, really I'm not offering anything new here. We're really just looking at ways of continuing to do what we currently do in working with our contractors. And I'm not really expecting any significant change to our contracting arrangements. over the years we have identified the contractors who work well for us and who do a good job, and we really want to keep that going. But we are hoping for some improvements on the management end for us, which is really extending the upper limit of our arrangement from the current $50,000, which is the threshold for the Service Alliance Agreement, to $150,000. We're looking to have quicker contractor engagement processes. We want to have established contractor selection processes on a statewide basis and easier management of insurances. And I'll just wind up by saying not only does this put some obligations back onto contractors, it also puts obligations back onto BMW in the way that it conducts its businesses with contractors. Thank you.